So, okay, let's get started. As I previously said, we are recording this session just to make sure that we can distribute it after the session, or if you want to share it with someone, you will be able to do that. We will get back to that information. I'm very glad that you all are attending, and I will share the space today with three of my colleagues. So we have Fredrik Stier, who will be the moderator. We have Susanne Thunman, who is our competence lead on process mining. And we have Alexander Lepp, who is our sales and delivery responsible for within the Stockholm area. So we are going to talk about RPA, or rather, we're going to look at the art of hiring a digital employee. As I said previously, you feel free to ask questions in the chat whenever you want to, or if you run into any technical difficulties, just enter the questions or related to that in the chat. Fredrik will try to manage it, and we'll try to answer it to the best of our ability. So my background is that I'm, you could say that since I started my career, I'll actually try to make myself redundant within all of my tasks I have done. So I've actually worked with automation in some type or form for the past 20 years within production, within distribution, within retail, and within healthcare. So to that extent, when I talk about this, I often get the question that they want me to show a well-implemented automation. And yeah, I can do that, but it is kind of boring because the best implemented automation I've ever known is the one that you never see again. So when we do an implementation of an automated flow, the user won't have to look at it again. But I don't think that's what people actually are asking about. I think they want to see something more. So, Alexander, do you have something you could tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. My name is Alexander Lepp, and I'm responsible for our intelligent automation department in Stockholm, where we work with RPA and among other things. And yes, the automation that Johan just talked about is a dream that we all have before joining a new assignment. But it is, as I said, a dream, and the reality is sometimes not that exciting. As most of you know, we have a number of systems that we work with daily. Click. We continuously develop reusable automations for our own applications such as Raindance, Aroma, Reserve and Pool, and other applications such as SAP, Salesforce, etc., to streamline the manual and tedious work. And all this is saved in our code library that we can easily, quickly reuse our components on projects together with you. And here we have a list of example number of automations that we have been creating to target our system Raindance that can be reused. And if we deep dive into one of these processes, we will show you a digital employee and how it actually works. And we will start a robot that runs an invoice control process in Raindance. And it's a process that is live in the live environment, so the data is blurred, so you will not be able to see all the text. So we did start the process manually, and then as it did log into the Raindance, and now it will navigate to internal invoices and forward them without any control. And then we'll navigate to supplier invoices and do some certain filters to filter out invoices for control, and several filters are made. And then it loads data used for control from an Excel file that then checks the invoices one by one. The checks are made regarding account number, corporate tax, VAT registration number, credit invoice, and trusted supplier. And if the check fails, then the robot reports it through a message on the invoice, and the invoice status will set to under investigation. and then it's done. And as you can see, it works much like a human, but a little bit faster. But it will not be more exciting than that, since we automate tedious manual tasks, which is why the video we show will not be fun and exciting either. So now back to you, Jan.
Yeah, for sure. The video is not fun or exciting for us to look at, but for the one who has been doing those tasks, it is quite fun and exciting to have the opportunity to get rid of them. So, as I said, I've been automating stuff for 20 years, and in the past few years, we have been accelerating within robot process automation. But to what I see is that we don't get the traction that it actually deserves in the market. And our worries are that we're starting to think about, are we good at describing what this is? Or do we make it more complex than it needs to be? So what we're trying to do is actually to take another view on it and actually try to compare RPA as a hiring process or hiring a new resource. Because when you come to think of it, it's actually quite similar to a hiring process. You have to look at the demands you have to what you need to source to your business. You need to find someone to do it. You look at the resumes and you look at what the capabilities are. You try to figure out if they're actually able to do the work. You look at what other customers are saying or what other people are saying about it, and you need to pay something to be able to do it. So if we run through this process like an hiring process, we can start with the demands. So the reason we often look to robots or to digital employees to do some tasks is that we see that we need to free up resources in our existing business. We need to make sure that our people are able to do their work, other work than the tedious and monotonous job they're doing right now. When doing this, we often look at the rule-driven processes, since we know that these type of resources shouldn't take any initiative. We look at the rule-driven processes. We also want to delete repetitive tasks. We don't want our excellent employees to do repetitive tasks that aren't value-driven. And we also want to manage large volumes, since we want to make sure that we can reap the benefits of the investment we do into the software. So from our perspective, we often look at this, we compare it to what happened within manufacturing when we moved in the automatic robots and made sure that manufacturing was running smoothly with the help of robots. And to some extent, I think that might have been the wrong way to go. People start to think about small robots sitting on the desk, starting to type on keyboards, but that's not at all what we're doing. So we've run it a step further. So we created actually an ad for what's the type of resources we're looking for when we talk about RPA. So the type of ad that when we were looking for this type of resource, it would be like, if you like obvious, repetitive, monotonous tasks where you're not given any room to take your own initiative, there's a job for you. What you also need to have is a high working capacity and also be triggered by doing this with quality. I know some of these aspects of an assignment wouldn't appeal to me. I don't know if any human would like to do this, but anyway. So to be able to have any applicants to this ad, we actually created our own resume. So you don't have to deep dive into the resume. We've tried to summarize it and summarize the key aspects of this type of digital employee or the digital resource. The first thing you need to know is that it is a software. It lives and works on a computer. It can have its own computer, or it can work on an employee's computer. I'll get back to that, because of why this is important. As you saw in the video with Alexander, it acts like an employee. It's pretty much, it works with the same programs and the same interfaces as any other employee, which means that it can do the work of an ordinary employee. But unlike an employee, it doesn't need any breaks. As long as there are assignments, it will work around the clock. But as you also saw, it cannot speed up the slow application it works with. If you do a search, or if you do a filtration that takes time in the application and the interface you're working with, it will take the same time as for the ordinary employee. Another thing is that it performs the task to the letter. This means that it won't hesitate to follow the instructions you're giving it, and it won't need motivation to do it either. But at the same time, it requires a very high quality on the instruction, because if it's wrong, it will do it wrong. But like an employee, it can actually delegate and ask for help. It can delegate difficult decisions or unexpected problems to other employees or to an instructor. So looking at the demands, looking at the ad, looking at the resume, we can see that this is quite a good fit. So we tried to set up an interview with our digital employee. What is quite apparent is it's pretty quiet. But to our luck, we have the excellent software suppliers who are more than happy to help us with describing what these digital employees can do for us. One thing we can note is that they are very experienced. We can look back at almost 20 years of doing this type of digital employee work within different types of companies and different types of industries all across the world. You can also note that it's very competent. It can actually do anything a human can do with this type of repetitive tasks, but it can do some more. It can use APIs straight from the software, or it can use write into database, or decrypt a JSON file without even flinching. So it's pretty more competent than a human in some aspects. What our software vendors often talk about is how ambitious these type of digital employees are. They want to make experience-based decisions based on machine learning. They want to support us in process analysis by doing automated process mining. It wants to run automated testing with test automation. We won't go into details with this, but we will do in the future somewhere along the line. So if we've done our interview, we feel that this is the right resource for us. We need to think about, are there any real benefits of using these digital employees? So Susanne, do you have any input on this?
Hi, Johan. Yes, I have. My name is Susanne Thunman. I'm the competence lead for process mining, RPA's friend, you can say. Within CGI Global, we have made thousands of RPA implementations where we can see actual benefits for the business. Among the global implementations, we see many large implementations with fantastic results. We work with IT support in the finance sector, accounts management within biotech companies, management administrations at a global insurance company. In Sweden, we also have implemented hundreds of processes in both public and private operations. The focus in Sweden has been on freeing up capacity and enabling digitization, and we are really proud of the work we have done for them. For example, implemented the tools, working methods, and operation model for one of Sweden's largest municipalities. RPA also released staff for clinical work at one of Sweden's largest hospitals as well. One thing we clearly see is that the fastest effect is usually achieved within the same type of processes. You can click, Joanne. We see that the best benefit comes within the framework of the central support processes. The processes within finance, HR, IT, purchase and sales are usually the places where you have come furthest with your standardization. With that said, it's not only these areas that contains administrative processes. As you can see from the word cloud, with examples of processes that we have done, we have created a lot of benefits in many other processes. Back to you, Johan.
Thank you. As you can see, we can clearly see the benefits of using digital employees, and as we also said, it's usually within processes that can be quickly automated. So if we go back to our recruitment process, we're actually at the step where we want to know what does other people say. So looking at the references, if you ask our customers and see what they say, well, it is really competent. It is as an employee, but we can run integrations with it. It's very accurate. It does exactly what you asked and nothing more. And it's always available. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But at the same time, it's very cheap in operation. It costs about 20% of an employee when you scale it. and you actually have unlimited capacity. If you run into a capacity issue, you actually just create a clone, and then you can double your capacity and continue the work. So to summarize, we can say that these types of resources, the digital employee, they have some difficulty taking initiative, and it will be a bit quiet at our team meetings, but at the same time, it will be the most loyal employee you will ever encounter. It's always there, always ready to do the job. So we now know all the benefits and we want to reap them, but what about the costs? Well, looking back at the projects we're running and we have run, we can see that the cost to recruit, actually the cost to getting a digital employee up and running, is somewhere around 7,500 to 25,000 euros, depending on your ambition, depending on where you want to go. And what we're looking at here is the external cost of provisioning and developing and commissioning a first process for a digital employee. That meaning that you ask for help to be able to do this. Looking at the salary, so to speak, if you run the installation at CGI, and we provide all the licensing, all the extra, all the maintenance, and all the hardware, we see that the cost would be around 2,000 euros per month for the first employee, and then it would be half that for every new employee. The reason why we use our benchmark is that your cost structure might look different, and we need to just make sure that you know that the salary isn't that a big deal when you're out and running with your digital employee. So what are the benefits? What are the hard benefits? Well, and this looks a little bit too good to be true, and in some cases it actually is. Because if we look at when a digital employee becomes profitable, and we use a theoretical case where we have a finance department with 7 people that works in 10 processes, we consider half of the work automatable, and the workload increases on average by 20% per year, we actually see that we get a benefit within 2 to 3 months. And that's regardless of how we're calculating. If you're calculating that you actually get the cost cut when the digital employee take over the work, or if you just want to meet the workload increase, we still get the same fast benefit. But this is based on that you actually have done everything right, that you have done your onboarding, you have done the onboarding of the digital employee in the right way. And we'll get back to that in a few moments. But to summarize, if we look at the capabilities, or rather the demands, what we want to do, we look at the capabilities of the resources we have at hand, and we look at the cost structure, there's no question about it. We need to do this, and we need to do this now. So in this theoretical example, we actually contract the digital employee, but it's now when the real work begins. And we talk about real work, I'll go into what we mean about that. Because what you need to realize is a digital employee has the same requirement for an onboarding process as an ordinary employee. You actually need to make sure that the digital employee has somewhere to work. It needs a computer, it needs permissions, and it needs emails if it's supposed to work with those. It also needs training and instruction. They need to know what to do, which processes to use, and get the instruction on how to manage those processes. You also have to clarify roles and responsibilities. Who's responsible for the digital employee, and what would happen if you're running into any security issues? Who decides what the digital employee should do and shouldn't do? And last and not least, even though the digital employee is excellent and actually runs 24/7, he or she might run into problems. And who helps the digital employee if it gets stuck in their work? Who makes sure that the digital employee actually gets work done in the way we expect it? So moving into this area, we can start with somewhere to work. And we can talk about different ways the digital employee can work. The easiest way, and the way most often used, is that it works instead of an employee on the employee's computer. We can call this the attended digital employee. It means that it uses the employee's computer, it uses the employee's applications, and it uses the employee's credentials when doing the work. But the employee cannot do their work at the same time. So we're actually locking a computer for a digital employee where a user is looking at the digital employee doing its job. We can also see a solution which is new since October, where we can work at the same time as an employee on the employee's computer. We can call this attended with picture-in-picture. We're still using the employee's computer, we're still using the employee's application and the employee's credential. We just have a separate window within the desktop where the digital employee is working. So the employee can work besides the digital employee, but it's still using the same resources. So while the digital employee is running, I wouldn't run any large macros within the solution for the ordinary employee. The one solution we often suggest is the one where the digital employee actually works on their own computer or on a virtual server. We can call this the unintended digital employee. And as I said, the digital employee will work on its own computer, but you run into some issues. It needs its own applications. It needs to have them installed on the computer, and it also needs its own credentials. It needs the credentials to be able to access everything from this computer to be able to do the tasks at hand. So at this stage, we've actually made sure that our new employee has a place to work. But now we get into the funny details or the tough details. We need to make sure that the digital employee actually knows what to do and when to do it. So from our perspective, we often recommend to start with the idea generation and process analysis. We need to make sure that the processes we want to automate are the best ones, and we need to find the best robot potential, the best automation potential within these processes. What we've learned is that this is often most easy if we use an experienced robot instructor. One of our business analysts or project manager who has done this can pretty quickly find out which processes that are best suited to give to a digital employee. We can also use tools to record and create the necessary documentation to create fast and efficient development, so that we actually have the right documentation right off the bat to give to development. If we move into development, we can see that there are large benefits of having an idea of how to run your development in an efficient manner. Because what you need to know is that when you develop these processes for the digital employees, you want to make sure that you have a high maintainability. So you need to know how the code is structured to be able to maintain it when it starts running. You also want to look at reusability. As you saw when Alexander presented, we actually have a code repository where we build components, which means that when we start new processes, we can actually move pretty fast by reusing these components. To be able to do that within CGI, we have put together some best practices, which we follow to make sure that we always ensure reusability and maintainability when we build new processes for our customers. So we've been looking at a place for work for the digital employee. We made sure that it has its instruction, but we also need to make sure that it knows what to do and when to do it. And then we can start to talk about orchestration. You can actually look at the robots in two different ways. You can either look at it as a solo robot, where the robot actually lives in its own computer, lives in its own bubble, and just works along with the tasks at hand. But to be able to check what the robot is doing, to be able to check and configure what the digital employee is doing, you need to access that computer, stop the robot, and start and try to look at what it's doing. So our suggestion is often that you move to what we call an orchestrated robot, where the robot is actually governed by a central orchestration service, where we as administrators of these digital employees are able to go in and look at how are the tasks performed. Are there any issues? Can we do something else? Can we update the digital employees' tasks? And can always do that from the orchestrated services. And one of the big differences is that if you have several digital employees, you can actually reallocate work between different digital employees depending on how busy they are, and that you can do through this orchestrated services. So we'll actually pass through what directly affects the digital employee. But looking at its surrounding, we also must make sure that we have the governance of the digital employee in the right way. And one thing that has become apparent when we are working with RPA and digital employees is that the roles and responsibilities part of it is actually much more acute than it is when we talk about other IT different functions. The reason is that we see a lot of cross-functional collaboration within the business and also between IT and business. That's the key element of being able to reap the benefits of the digital employees. What we see in most cases is that we have an IT department that has all the necessary, or actually manages all the necessary IT hardware and software issues. They're responsible for the RPA platform, security, credentials and stuff like that. And on the other hand, we have the business who cross-functionally are responsible to generate the requirements for what we're trying to solve. As we said, that these are actually pretty cross-functional, both on business and IT side, and we need to have competences within both to be able to get the collaboration to work seamlessly. And what we see is that there is a benefit of creating an RPA Center of Excellence, who's actually responsible for the entire service catalog for the digital employees, cross-function and cross-IT. So independent on what we're doing, you have a Center of Excellence who is responsible for everything running RPA. So within this, we talk about that the RPA Center of Excellence is responsible for training and competence overall. Also responsible for making sure that we get the backlog, because the backlog is the bread and butter of implementing a digital employee. We always need to have more for the digital employees to do because the capacity is unlimited. So making sure that we have a substantial backlog is an important part of the Center of Excellence work. The Center of Excellence is also responsible to deliver the automated processes. So they actually build the robots and build the processes and supply the digital employees with the work they're supposed to do. Also responsible for governance, making sure that we have a relevant cost-benefit evaluation and make sure that the digital employees or the processes that we supply the digital employees are quality assured with the toll gates that we require. And last and not least, the COE is responsible for operational support. Because what you need to know about our friends, the digital employees, is that even though they are very, very excellent and fantastic at delivering what we expect them to do, the lack of initiative makes them quite administratively demanding. Because since they can't take any initiative, any change within the different applications they're working with will interfere with their process, will interfere with the way they deliver. So if the user interface change, or we see that there's some unexpected data that comes in one of the fields, or we have an underlying system that updates without telling us that they were going to update, or we see a volume change within within different processes that may affect how we want to run the sequences, the robot will stop. It will not function anymore. And what we see is that these errors that can appear is often pretty simple to fix. Our junior developers can fix most of the errors within 15 to 30 minutes, as long as we get the notice that they need to do it. So what we're trying to say is that because the effect of implementing a digital employee using some senior advisors or some senior developers is that down the line, all these small errors will make that these senior developers will drown in maintenance. They won't be able to get the development done. They won't be able to do the backlog in the phase that we want them to, because they are busy handling small changes or small errors. So our suggestion here is that when you do implement RPA in a digital employee, is to make sure that you have a structured error handling. To make sure that you get the signals in the right place, and also make sure that you have an available and cost-effective support. A support that isn't dependent on a single person. Support that can provide the services you need to make sure that your digital employee is always up and running. So what I'm trying to say, or what we're trying to say, is actually we're in a place right now where the costs of running the digital employees, what they're able to do, and the pace that we're able to implement, and the cost efficiency of the digital employees, is that automation will happen. And we're not talking about when, if, we're talking about when, because everything that can be automated will be automated within a short future. So after this pretty fast-paced run through of the digital employee, I can see that even if you get a better picture or get another perspective on how to look at your digital employees, there might be concerns or questions. You might think about, okay, I know we need a digital employee, but my management needs to know and understand, and thinking about how to organize or which processes are appropriate. And maybe you want to do a proof of concept just to make sure that you get it. And of course, we're able to supply anything of that. We can have seminars with management to make them understand the strategic benefits, or we can have workshops where we actually, with our robot whisperers, go through and create your RPA backlog, so you have a backlog to actually run from. And we can also go in and do separate proof of concept, just to make sure that you understand the value of the digital employees. But from our perspective, we look at this as a journey. We look at it this as the RPA, or the automation journey, where we need to take us and our customers through this journey to make sure that we can reap all the benefits of the digital employees and make sure that we use them in the right way. And we're more than happy to help. Within CGI, we have a Scandinavian coverage. We have a joint development where we actually do our offer development and competence development, develop our best practices, and have the supplier collaboration to make sure that our suppliers drive our business forward. We also have sales and delivery responsibles all across the country. We also have it in Norway, and starting to do it in Denmark as well. And we have the ability to deliver, no matter where you are. We have more than 100 committed consultants that are interested and want to drive the RPA and digital employee journey forward. So with that said, I don't know, Fredrik, do we have any questions?
We do not have any questions in the chat, but I do have a question. If you would start a project today, never done this before, what, in your opinion, is the biggest challenge from an organization point of view?
I would say the biggest challenge is actually getting people on the same page, making sure that everyone knows the benefits, everyone knows what to expect of the digital employee. And that's why we actually take this approach to make sure that we have something that is graspable for everyone, and that everyone can apply into their own business. So I would say that would be the biggest challenge.
What is the typical ROI on the projects that we are running? What can you expect from a project like this as far as an ROI?
From an ROI perspective, I would say that if you do it correctly from the beginning, I would say you have an ROI on less than 6 months. So you will have the ROI. Actually, if we look at it from a theoretical standpoint, we have an ROI within 2 or 3 months. But if you want to run it the right way and want to do this as a part of your business going forward, I would say the ROI is less than 6 months.
Now I'm going to actually ask a question which I'm usually asked by customer. Why RPA rather than integration? We are looking to do integration instead of RPA. Why would you use RPA?
I don't know, Susanne or Alexander, do you want to take this question? No? Okay, then I'll take it as well. Well, RPA, you can say that RPA is very, very fast-paced, and we can move from into a developed process within a couple of weeks. So what you could say is that RPA is actually very effective, and you can do it cross-platform, cross-functional, while as integration project often takes long time and needs more evaluation before you can have them up and running. To that sense, you can say that RPA might be the duct tape or the permanent duct tape to be able to evaluate and eliminate processes that are actually not that functional. So and that is also needed to be said, that when we move into an RPA project and move into, the first thing we do isn't to start code the digital employee. The first thing we do is to evaluate the process, look at the process, and make sure that it is a good RPA candidate, and also evaluate if the process is actually accurate from the beginning. So there is a large part of business development or change management within an RPA project where we actually run into and do a process evaluation before we do the actual development, which might be a difference to the integration project. I don't know, Fredrik, do you have another your own opinion on this?
My response is usually that RPA is more integration is moving data between different systems and is very effective and very long-term solution for it. RPA is more about automating processes. To be able to do this within an integration scenario, you also need the actual system supplier or the ISV to be able to process automatically any case that comes along. So there's quite a big difference from that. And I also say that typically I would lead with the RPA, and if the volume increases and the demand increases, I would look at doing an integration. So it's not one or another. I would say it's different tools that are applicable to different scenarios. I just received a question. Can you talk a bit about the maintenance of the solution in future time period? Are we dependent on the team that developed it? Do you want me to answer that, Johan, or do you want to answer it?
No, I can answer it. We've seen this, and we've seen that is an issue in the past. And what we're doing right now is that we have standardized the way we develop our processes. We also standardized the documentation, also make sure that we have a governance structure within CGI, that if you want to buy the support from us, we have a low cost threshold to make sure that we can keep the integrations up and running. We can also make sure that the way we maintain our best practices, maintain our documentation is transferred to the customer if they want to do it themselves. But from that point, my suggestion is always that you actually keep the maintenance of the low issues or the simple issues at CGI, because we will always do it most cost efficiently and make sure that we have the right resources that know the processes at our customers.
One of the challenges with maintenance within the RPA is always that it can be quite a lot work if you don't do it very structurally when you develop. So it's very important that you do this thoroughly and you do it structurally sound when you develop the code, because that is going to make your business case much better, because we don't need to do as much maintenance on the code itself or the solution. I just received another question. How do we maintain and support the RPA solution at the customer? It's similar, but you can respond to that.
It's similar. Yeah, to explain it, we actually have a team of junior developers who has the task of always making sure that they're up to speed with what the customers have installed, making sure that they can answer and govern the solutions at the customers. But the support solutions and depends a little bit on how our customers have done their own installations. So depending on if they're only moving within an attended robot, we might have a different solution than we have if you have an orchestrator and an unattended solution in place. But the core principle is that we want to be able to provide a cost-efficient support for our customers, where they don't have to pay a large maintenance fee, but rather that we actually support them when incidents happen.
So it sounds like a little bit more like a pay-and-go model.
Yeah, a pay-and-go model with a small fee, a small continuous fee, just to make sure that we keep the knowledge of the processes up and running.
Now I'm going to challenge you a bit. The companies who are producing the tools, they say that anyone can develop these processes and it's easy and so on. What is your reflection on that?
Yeah, I would say yes, anyone can develop a process up to a point. And that point is that you might run into some issues if you want to do more complex integrations like Citrix or RDP or directly into some databases. But otherwise, the user interface is simple and you can pretty fast develop your own processes. But as soon as you run into that, you want to run it in a continuous manner and want to make sure that this cost benefit, that it is beneficial to run it, you need to have a structure around it. You need to make sure that you have the support. You need to make sure that you're not dependent on a single individual to reap those benefits. And that's where the processes around maintenance and support and best practices and structured code comes in. And that's why you need it. Even though the code itself isn't that hard to build, the maintenance of it's pretty much like when you have your Excel heroes out in your business. The citizen developers running the Excel spreadsheet macros within the business. As an IT professional, you know that yeah, they produce business benefit, but they are a handful when they don't run that well anymore.
Okay, thank you. I think that sort of concludes the questions that I have and that I've seen in the chat. Does anyone else have any more questions? Please put it in the chat and I'll ask them.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, you're always welcome to come back to us with an email or with a question in some other channel. But going forward, what I want to send to you or give you the message is that, well, this was a short introduction into how you can look at the digital employees and what the benefits of the digital employees might be in your business. But we also have more webinars to come. We have a new model for how we're going to develop our offering within the digital employee space, and we're going to have more webinars during the springs. We're going to talk about user interaction, how to communicate with the digital employees. We'll talk about intelligent assistants. When we talk about that, the digital assistant actually will be able to decide stuff for you. We'll also talk about process discovery. Are we doing the right thing, and could we do it better? And we also want to go through some new aspects of test automation, because otherwise you just test and test again. But this time we can do it without test fatigue. And with that said, if I should summarize with the entire presentation, I would say that what we're trying to say is that we have the digital employees, and they offer great opportunities into creating an efficient business. But they can be quite challenging, especially in terms of how to organize to make sure that you get the right benefits from it, and also how to manage them when they are up and running. But from our point of view, there's help to be had. We've done this and we can do it again, and are more than pleased to help you if you have any questions. So please reach out to me or any of my colleagues if you have any questions, or if you want to have a run through on your own. To make sure that we actually reap the benefits from the digital employees in the way that we think we could. So, with that said, if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to thank you for today. Thank you, Fredrik, Susanne, and Alexander for your help today. And get right back to us. Talk to you later.